PCN is brought to you in part by the following underwriters.
Tonight on PCN, we bring you stories about the people, organizations, and residents from Duxbury, Kingston, Pembroke, and Plymouth. This week, we bring you an update on the Duxbury Roundabout project, tour Tucker Reserve in Pembroke, and stop into a poetry event in Kingston.
We meet up with the Goldenrod Foundation's last event in the series Making Waves to hear student presentations, and we meet some young, inspired people who raised funds for a local playground.
PCN meets some local players in the Plymouth League of Women Voters' second annual Civics Bee.
Loretta LaRoche is back on set with Get a Life, and we begin in Duxbury at the corner of Winter Street and Route 53. This spring marks the beginning of the last phase of the $1.4 million roundabout project at the intersection of Winter Street and Route 53 in Duxbury. PCN met up with a state contracted engineer from Mass DOT to learn more about the timeline of completion and what travel delays to be expected in the area throughout the summer.
All right, right now we're standing at the intersection of Route 53 and Winter Street in Duxbury. We're currently constructing the Duxbury Roundabout project. It's a preferable method of traffic flow through an area such as this. Now that we're coming back, our contractor will resume work next week. He'll come back on site. He'll start excavating. He'll start constructing the approaches into the roundabout, initial paving operations. The following month, we'll start construction on the roundabout itself and the granite surround that's on that. Around June of this coming year, we will be working on the roadway approaches. We'll reconstruct the approaches approximately 200 feet in each direction, north, south, east, west. All four quadrants will be restored with plantings, with lumen seed. After that, just some final striping of the project, some cleanup, punch list items, and we're hoping to be out of here by mid to late September and be complete. One of the reasons, or several of the reasons, we've elected to utilize a roundabout design as opposed to a standard signalized intersection are traffic flow. With a roundabout, you get a much higher level of service for traffic flow. Traffic doesn't have to stop necessarily. If you can see the way we've widened out the roundabout, you get a much better visibility coming through the intersection as well. You can see traffic from a farther distance. Also, there's an aesthetic value to a roundabout. If you look at the ones we've constructed throughout the rest of the Commonwealth, they're very attractive once you're done. The utilization of the granite, the stamped concrete aprons, the plantings, they work into the area much better. You don't have just signal lights going overhead. A third benefit is pedestrian flow. People would assume that crosswalks in a signalized intersection are better pedestrian flow, but the roundabout provides kind of an ancillary third benefit to that. Pedestrians don't necessarily have to make sure that there's north-south traffic at the same time. They don't have to cross two movements. They can cross halfway, they'll have a spot on the island where they can then stop, reassess, and then cross again. So it actually provides a much safer access for pedestrians around the whole quadrant. Other than just routine slowdowns through an active construction project, I don't think they'll notice that many delays. I mean, there's no detours that are going to be taking place. Traffic will flow through the construction zone as well as possible, utilizing, obviously, safety signage, message boards, traffic detail police. We're eager to complete the project at Mass DOT. We understand that this has been inconvenient for motorists, the residents, the abutters of Duxbury. We've been working very closely with the town officials throughout the project. We're on the last leg of it now, so weather has turned, winter's over. Once we're back here a week, 2 weeks from now, we think things are going to run fairly smoothly at this point, and I think people are going to be very happy with the final product.
As the primary battle heats up on both sides of the aisle, the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters thought this might be just the right time to show the adults that there's more to elections than sound bites on the political talk shows. They hosted their second annual Civics Bee featuring 6 schools from the South Shore, and the topic was elections. Brian Sullivan was at the Spire in downtown Plymouth to soak it all in.
During an election year, it's easy to come across someone who claims to know everything about the way government ought to be run, whether you want to hear about it or not. Well, we met some high school students from the South Shore who actually do know about how the government is run, and unlike that unsolicited opinion you get from your uncle at a family gathering, these kids were actually asked about their knowledge. It's the second annual Civics Bee, hosted by the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters, this year featuring more schools than last year. Sticking with the election theme, this year's main focus was the electoral process and all that it entails.
It's a different format this time around because there are 6 schools involved, so they split it up into 2 separate sections, with 3 teams taking the stage per round. The winner from each round will square off at the finale, and the winner from that takes home the bragging rights of most knowledgeable about state, local, and federal elections, as well as other governmental affairs. There's also a pretty sizable trophy at stake to bring back to their respective schools.
The 6 high schools involved were Plymouth North, Silver Lake, Carver Middle, Plymouth South, Rising Tide Charter, and Sacred Heart. Each round featured 40 multiple-choice questions and some impressive knowledge. The Area League of Women Voters hosts the event to highlight the importance of civics being taught in our schools, as well as raising awareness of just how government works on all levels before people just go ahead and cast a ballot. The first round featured Sacred Heart, Plymouth South, and Rising Tide Charter, with the students from Rising Tide advancing to the finals. Next up were Plymouth North, Silver Lake, and Carver Middle. Following their 40 questions, these 3 teams finished with nearly identical scores to the teams that preceded them, which was probably just a coincidence. The winner from this round was Plymouth North. The public school and the charter school took the stage for what would turn out to be an epic bout. 15 questions, and if necessary, a sudden death overtime featuring bonus questions. It became apparent when the 2 teams were tied after 10 questions that this was likely to go beyond regulation. 2 questions into overtime, and Plymouth North was finally able to seal the deal. Junior Leanne Galani.
When we got into the last round, we went down 2 initially, so we knew we had to do some work in those last 10 questions. We had to answer them correctly in order to make it to sudden death, and then in sudden death, it was just, we needed to get the right answers. It was crazy. At the end, we were back and forth, and then we settled on something at the end.
Much of that pressure was on the shoulders of teammate Chris Nolan, also a junior at North.
I've taken AP Government in school, and nobody else on my team had, so that was the reason why they seemed to be turning to me a lot. There was a lot of pressure.
Despite the win, these kids didn't even know what the topic was going in, so Galanic had these words of advice for future contenders.
I would say definitely take the theme and run with that, because we studied like general civics, and it wasn't we didn't necessarily gear it towards election process, which would have been better to go in a specific direction.
At the Spire in downtown Plymouth, I'm Brian Sullivan, PACTV Community News.
That was terrific. And there's so many young people that don't understand the whole political system, how it works. And it's very confusing to older people also. So I'm really glad that they had that Civics Bee. It was good.
This is on their second annual one, so it's something they keep building on and making better. But I just think it's such a wonderful thing to do. It's just like a spelling bee, but it just really teaches and brings it out. And just, I really want to appreciate Brian's voiceover on that part to really help people understand
explain it,
how the event went. It's a very exciting event.
It is very good.
Land trusts and preserves are some of the greatest natural treasures we have at our disposal. Whether you're a hiker, cyclist, or just want to walk the trails to get away from the world and back to nature, it's nice to know you have a nature preserve close by. We stopped over to one such preserve by the Indian Head River on the Pembroke-Hanover line and spoke with some of the folks that helped to keep the land open to the public.
This property was donated to us by the Tucker family back in 1993, and it's one of many examples of families in southeastern Mass who have recognized the importance of conserving open space, as it is something that's disappearing around the area and has been for the past 10 years especially so. And so they graciously donated this riverfront land.
I'm part of the Mass Lift program that stands for the Massachusetts Land Initiative for Tomorrow. I do community engagement at Wildlands Trust. Mostly that involves doing education, public programs, just allowing people to see what's out there and get them out there outside on the trails, enjoying the land that we have.
A half mile of this trail runs right along the West Indian River, so you have great water views along the length, going through mostly a pine oak tree stand. And as you get onto the back side of the property, the second half of the trail, you enter a more mixed of vegetation in terms of, you see a lot of hemlocks and a lot more vegetation and types of trees that you see further up north. This land is preserved forever and will not be developed and is open for the public's enjoyment. And we hope to foster stewardship in the public by creating pleasant, easy to access trails that go through a variety of terrain. Tucker Preserve is a great opportunity for passive recreation, running, walking your dog. It's a big dog walking area. And because the first half of the trail is relatively flat and you do get such a great mix of scenery, both you have the woods to your left and the river to your right. And then as you get to the backside, you can choose to turn around because it's nice and flat. So if you're just getting outdoors, it's a nice little easy walk. But the backside, you hit some hills and some more technical terrain with rocks. And so you could get a little bit of both.
So by providing the public programs and getting people out on the trails, we hope that everyone starts to enjoy open space, really understands the value of nature that we have. The more people that we have outside, hands-on, in the field, the more support we're going to have for conservation and the more people are going to value that as a community aspect.
In honor of Poetry Month, the Adams Center in Kingston held a one-man show called Robert Frost, Light and Dark, with actor, director, and writer J.T. Turner. PCN was invited in to bring you this story.
So I'm here at the Adams Center today for a performance of a play that I wrote called Robert Frost, Light and Dark. Robert Frost, I think, has to be, at least among Americans, people's favorite poet. They love him. Even people that don't like poetry love Robert Frost. And when I read about him, read about his life, one of the unfortunate things was he had a biography printed after he died that was very uncomplimentary. And it's only in the last few years that we've taken a more even-handed look at him and his life. So I wanted an opportunity for Frost to be able to talk in his own words, using some of his poetry as a background about his life and times. So I have been a professional actor for most of my adult life. I started off at a very young age as a performer. I had a career as a banker, and then over time just grew tired of that. And a number of years ago I decided it would make sense to start writing some of my own performance material that I could use in between gigs.
All the really good titles have been taken, mostly by those magazine fellows writing about me. Morning Frost, Frost in the evening, Frost in the afternoon, Frost heaves.
So it's a one-man performance. The pretense, I had to pick a place in Robert Frost's life where it would make sense for him to be talking to people while most of the major events had already occurred. So I chose him in the early 1940s. I set this particular piece at his cabin in Vermont, and he's invited some people over for him to read some of his poetry and talk a little bit about his life. And over the course of about an hour, 15 minutes, he shares some of his major poems with the audience. And he also shares a lot about his life that people may not have knowledge of.
I especially love in my poetry to capture the sounds, the rhythm, the cadence of New England. You can get away with a lot of mistakes if you come from a certain part of the country.
So I've always been a huge fan of Robert Frost, and I decided I would do a one-man performance about it. And I was really fortunate because one of my professors when I was at Emerson College, who I've stayed in touch with over the years, actually worked quite a bit with Robert Frost and knew him well. So with his help, I was able to develop a show and think about how to present it. And I did decide to do it first person, so I performed as Robert Frost. And choosing the voice and the poetry and all that, I had a lot of help. It took me about 2 years to get the whole piece together to where I was comfortable presenting it in front of an audience.
My family was deeply concerned that I would grow up and waste my life as a baseball pitcher. And I started writing poetry. Certainly baseball mighty good to them.
I'll just mention that I do a number of other historical characters. I perform as William Shakespeare. I have a one-man presentation of Charles Dickens doing A Christmas Carol. The author C.S. Lewis, who is a great Christian apologist and the author of Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, and a number of other historical characters like Benjamin Franklin that I tour with.
The Making Waves speaker series recently enjoyed its final presentations as high school students from local schools showcased their knowledge on projects designed to maintain and protect the environment. PCN was there.
Today we had the grand finale of the speaker series, Making Waves in Coastal Conservation. And we'd heard from a lot of adults, professionals in various forms of wildlife biology. It was so exciting to have the kids here because we learned what they're working on, what they're thinking about, what issues are important to them. And it's a lot. It's really impressive. We had one student talk about trash, the issue of trash in our town, which we know is a big one. And he discussed solutions. Everyone actually talked about solutions, which is great. That's what we need. He talked about recycling in the school. And he'd noticed that recycling sometimes goes in the trash. That shouldn't happen.
Well, I remember back in October when I did the coast sweep, and I really thought about how much trash is being put into the environment. And then I discussed the recycling system with my mom that I have at my house, and it turns out that it's not efficient enough.
We live in the Pine Barrens, a globally rare ecosystem, and two of the students talked about this, and you could sense their enthusiasm, their excitement about their own environment.
We already did a project in class about it, but like the main selling point is that like we live here. We live in the Pine Barrens, so like it just means a lot for like me and Cam over there. So like just doing a project on it like is very significant to us.
I mean, I always grew up around here, and that I found out that it was only one of 3 in the world, and that really interested me. That really got me thinking about like, wow, we live in one of the most rare ecosystems in the world, and that just kind of opened my eyes about it.
They don't know that like how globally rare the Pine Barrens are. So they're only found in like 3 spots in the United States and nowhere else in the world, which is like crazy. Because if they're gone, if for some reason like we don't preserve them enough or something like that, then they're going to be gone forever.
Because we live in one of only 3 major pine barrens in the world, that we have some animals that we can only find here. And I just want people to know that we should, like in Albany actually there's a shopping mall built right over a pine barren. I just want people to realize like how bad that can be for the rare animals that we have here.
Cole Guston, a freshman at Plymouth North, his grandfather introduced him to nature and stewardship of nature at a young age, and he's really taken it to heart. He's incredible. He's done projects I haven't even heard of. He worked on a fish ladder, he counts herring every year, he cleans up trash, he pulled purple loosestrife, a terrible invasive plant, out of wetlands, and who knows what the future holds in store for him.
So the fish ladder, the water will flow down the ladder towards the bottom, and then the fish will kind of swim through it. The ladder helps them get upstream more. So there'll be areas where if the water's going downhill and the fish need to get up the stream, the ladder helps the fish get up the hill, kind of.
It is not only the adults who are doing this. The kids are doing it, they care, and they're learning about it in school. They have dedicated teachers. So let's continue to support them in stewarding their natural environment.
When siblings Nina and Cole Whidden found out that the playground that they had gone to since they were just little kids would be undergoing a makeover if the sufficient funds were raised, they jumped at the chance to help raise that capital. Taking a page from their parents' playbook, who had done something similar years ago at another playground in town, the two high school students came up with some ideas for fundraising and acted on it. PCN went to Kingston to meet this enterprising brother and sister and get this story.
The current Captain Fred L. Bailey Playground has been, the equipment has been there for about 17, 18 years, so it is time, due to a playground audit that we just had, to replace that equipment and kind of rehabilitate and revitalize that particular piece of property. So we've done some different research from different companies and that sell the different kinds of equipment, and we are at a point now we've got a final design, and the town of Kingston voted at their special town meeting to support this project. They funded $90,000 through the Community Preservation Fund. The town meeting voted at the special town meeting to appropriate $90,000 for this particular project, and the project is going to be about $101,000. So we're going to try to raise another $11,000 approximately through other fundraising opportunities. We already did have another one, which was a Red Sox event day, and we've raised about $1,500 through that particular event. Nina and Cole Whidden are two Silver Lake High School students who came to the Recreation Department and had heard about this project and wanted to help out and find out how they could do some fundraising opportunities. They came to me with some ideas of what programs or activities they might be able to do. So the one that they chose was a ski trip, and they raised about $400 for this particular program, and then there was an additional money that was contributed by their aunt and uncle who actually matched their program fundraising.
My dad's on the rec commission, and he came home one day and he said, "Hey guys," I was sitting in my room, and he says, "The Reed Playground is going to get torn down, and it's not up to code." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so sad, because I have so many memories there. I used to go there all the time. I did playgroup here at the Reed Center when I was really young. That's where I met all of my lifelong friends, and it's really where my foundation in Kingston started. And when I heard about this, I was like, we have to do something about it, and Cole agreed with me. So that's kind of where it formed.
Some of them thought of it as a joke, but when they come up to ask me about it, because they listed our names on it, they were just asking if it was a real thing, and I was like, yeah, this is real, because they'd never heard of a ski trip as a fundraiser, because that's a pretty expensive thing. But once they all went and we all came back, they loved it. They wanted more and more of them. The importance of getting the project completed sometime in May, early June, is we have a huge summer program where we have about 300 children that participate in our summer program, and that playground is a piece of equipment and all the equipment there that we heavily utilize, and we're very excited to get it fully functional and kind of have a ribbon cutting ceremony just before the playground program starts.
I know that the playground camp over the summer uses it endlessly, so I know kids will have a new fun thing to play on, and it'll make camp even more fun.
We are joined again for our wonderful segment, Get a Life, with Loretta LaRoche, our stress management humorist. Welcome, Loretta.
Thank you so much.
Let's talk about April being Stress Management Humor Month.
Well, no, it's actually National Humor Month.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, that's what you meant. It's okay. I can correct you.
So what about Humor Month helps us with stress management?
Well, I don't know how many people really know that it's National Humor Month, and you don't have to have a sense of humor only in April. But it's very important to focus on humor, because without humor, essentially, you're depressed. The less you laugh, and then they take you away. And you make baskets and get on drug therapy and get counseling, but it's true. You have to really monitor the fact that you may not be laughing enough.
And we're not, because it seems like everybody is stressed out all the time about everything, including waiting in lines.
Well, I think people are stressed out about being stressed out. I mean, the fact of the matter is that stress is now being embraced as a metaphor for your self-worth. So that if someone comes up to you and you start engaging in a conversation, you say, "Oh, how are you? Oh, You won't believe it. You can't imagine what's going on. I have this to do. I have this many errands. I have to go here. I have to come back. My mother's sick. My dog needs vitamins. I think I have a wart on my head. I don't know. And you know, and you look at these people, and if you're in the same genre as they are,
Right.
you will try to outsource them.
I have more stress than
you.
you.
More stress than I have more stress, because listening is no longer a skill that a lot of people have anymore, because in your head you're now practicing what's going on with you while they're talking. So that's become the new way of life. Plus, there's a misery index, believe it or not. And
Who
they're
created the
finding out-
misery index?
Who the heck knows? Some statistician that has nothing better to do.
And what is the misery index
Well,
rate?
it gauges the amount of misery that people are feeling, and in this country, it's rising. So we're laughing less and less because we're feeling more and more miserable. And part of that is because we're fragmenting our connections to each other, which allowed us really to have more humor. I mean, as an example, I can tell you about my Italian origins growing up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
There was a lot of characters that stopped by the house. And, you know, they had all these foibles, and you discussed them after they left or before they came.
Right.
And now, I mean, who comes to the door? Nobody.
Yeah, nobody anymore.
If you
Yeah.
see somebody coming to the door now, you hide.
Well, maybe the FedEx guys bring you something, but that's about it.
Especially if they have their shorts on. I
Yeah.
mean, that's cool.
All right, well, getting back, though, to the fact that we're losing our sense of humor.
Right.
How can we practice? What practical advice can you give us to practice using humor in everyday situations that we run into?
That's a good question, because, you know, a lot of people don't realize that they're actually exhibiting humor in their minds, but they have used it to actually make themselves crazy.
Okay.
So one of the ways that we actually make ourselves crazy is to catastrophize and awfulize. So let's say you're in a line at the supermarket, because that's or in traffic.
Or at the bank.
So most people start railing against the situation they're in. Oh my God, look at all this traffic. Can you believe this? I can't believe. And I don't know why they can't believe it, because they see the cars.
Right.
And my ex-husband used to say, where did all these cars come from? And I say, it's a road. I think that's why there's cars.
Why they're there, right.
And so if you're in a line, you might do the same thing. Every time I come here, you know, there's always people. So when you're starting to do that, if you can witness your own behavior, if you can stand back and say, oh my God, there I go again.
Yeah, I'm getting all stressed out.
I'm getting all stressed out about being in a line.
Yeah.
In a supermarket, it's not, you know, I'm not at a funeral.
Right.
I'm not being treated for some egregious illness.
Right.
I'm only in a line.
Right. And the line will move.
And eventually, or you'll be found dead in the line. So you
at the supermarket.
At the supermarket, you know, maybe
She died in line.
amidst
Right.
the avocados or
Right,
something.
right. So the point
say
being,
to yourself,
yeah,
use the same catastrophic mentality and switch it over to seeing how funny that can be by using something called paradoxical intention, which means you continually disturb yourself till you see the funny. You get the aha in the ha-ha.
Okay.
So you
Gotcha.
say to yourself, I guess I'm going to be in this line for a very long time.
Right.
Probably overnight. I better find a place to sleep.
So it's all in your perspective. So your perspective is try to look at everything that's going to happen to you and find the humor in it.
If
Otherwise, it's going to
possible.
drive you crazy.
If possible. I mean, there are situations that doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens in retrospect.
Yep. Right. You could look back on it and say, I should have handled that differently.
But if there are things that are happening that are more mundane, you know, find a way to get through, because stress, you can't adapt and adapt and adapt and
Right.
adapt, because eventually
it's going to get you.
It'll hamper your immune system,
Yep.
your ability to think properly.
Right.
So, you know.
So we'll take this away. We will smile and we will laugh more.
Find the
because we have
bless in
to.
the mess, folks.
We will find the bless in the mess. Okay. Thank you, Loretta. And thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Please visit our website for previews, links, and more information, or find us on YouTube. PCN is also on Twitter and Facebook. See you next week for more local stories from Duxbury, Kingston, Pembroke, and Plymouth.